other provisions, the FAST Act provides almost $1.5 billion for the Successful Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act program, which helps transit agencies like Metro arrange financing for new investments in transportation infrastructure. Metro used this loan to accelerate the construction of the Crenshaw-LAX corridor, one of them, a light rail project that will improve transit access for several communities in my district, including the city of Inglewood. Furthermore, the FAST Act also provides $3.7 billion over 5 years specifically for bus and bus facilities programs. This is a 75% increase over the previous funding level. The increase is especially beneficial for local transit agencies that serve the South Bay, including Metro, Torrance Transit in the city of Torrance, and the G-Trans in the city of Gardena. Last October, Metro received $10.5 million federal bus grant, which was specifically designated for use in the South Bay region. Metro will use this grant to replace approximately 30 aging diesel buses with new low-emission compressed natural gas buses. Last year, I wrote to the Department of Transportation, to Secretary Anthony Fox, to express my strong support for this grant. I'm proud to have helped Metro obtain federal funding for this noteworthy project. And I'm especially proud that these new clean fuel buses will be used here in the South Bay. Moreover, I'm working closely with Torrance Transit and Gardena G-Trans to ensure that they too receive their fair share of federal transportation funding. Congress also renewed funding for the Tiger Transportation Grant Program in fiscal year 2016 in response to a letter I wrote the previous year to congressional leaders that was signed by 145 of my colleagues. In March of last year, I wrote another letter to congressional leaders supporting President Obama's request for $1.25 billion for Tiger in funding year 2017, and 137 of my colleagues signed that letter. Almost a year has passed, unfortunately, and there's some in Congress who have still not completed work on the federal funding for government programs in fiscal year 2017. However, when they do, I, along with Ted Lieu and others, will continue to advance full funding for transportation programs that benefit our districts. Finally, I'm going to touch on something that's going to make a few people in here a little bit upset. But I want you to know I'm monitoring Metro's work in the South Bay. As I'm sure you know, Measure M was passed by the voters in Los Angeles County in the 2016 elections. Measure M was Metro's proposal to levy a sales tax to fund new transportation projects throughout the county. Measure M includes a variety of projects that will eventually benefit the South Bay cities. These projects are as follows. $619 million toward the Green Line extension to the Crenshaw Boulevard in Torrance, $250 million toward the I-405/110 high occupancy vehicle connect ramps and interchange improvements, $51.5 million toward the I-110 express lanes extension south to the I-405 I-110 interchange, $150 million towards the I-405 South Bay curb improvements, $175 million toward the I-105 express lane from the I-105 to the I-605, $347 million toward the airport metro connector, also known as the 96th Street LAX People Mover Station, and $2 billion in escalated dollars over the next 40 years in local return revenue for South Bay cities to use for street improvements, pothole repairs, signals, etc. Now, being fully aware that the Torrance City Council and South Bay City's Council of Governments were both on record opposing Measure M because they were unhappy about the delayed scheduling of many of these projects. Ted Lieu and I intend to work with my South Bay cities and Metro leadership to make sure we receive not only our fair share of the transportation funds raised, but that the project schedules will more adequately reflect an equitable distribution of priorities throughout LA County. So, we're going to work on it. We promise you. Now, I'm not going to go into the Affordable Care Act because I think Ted, talked a lot about it. Again, you're going to hear a lot about this Affordable Care Act. What we have is health care under the Affordable Care Act, referred to as Obamacare, led by President Obama, designed to ensure that all of us, all Americans, have health care coverage. That's what the whole thing is all about. And of course, there are some aspects of it that people just don't like, and there are aspects that people do like. A lot of folks who are opposed to it are afraid of the mandate. They don't like the mandate. And without going into a lot of detail about that, let me just say, in order to have affordable care for everybody, we've all got to chip in. It's not that it can work if only a few people are involved in this health care plan. And so that's one of the issues that will be debated as we talk about this affordable care. There are some other aspects of it. Well, I'll just mention again, and Ted did mention it, that we are all very pleased about not only being able to keep our children, and I say children up to age 26, on our health care plans. And why is this so important? Because our children are graduating from college with a lot of debt. And they can't get the jobs that they want oftentimes. They're not making the amount of money they thought they were going to make after they graduated. And they can't get married as soon as they want to and have children and buy a house and all of that. The last thing they're thinking about is insurance because they think they're invincible anyway. And so we're pleased that we're able to keep them on. And the other aspect that we are so very pleased about, and most people are, is the fact that you cannot be turned down because of pre-existing conditions. Do you know how many people have died because they could not get health care coverage? And we all know people with everything from cancer to heart disease, high blood pressure, you name it. In our families, in our neighborhoods, we have been haunted with diseases that people could not afford to have insurance coverage for. And so mostly everybody likes that. Even the president-elect, who wants to get rid of the ACA, said he liked that aspect of it. But of course, we don't know what he's going to say tomorrow. It may change. But let me just say that we're going to wrestle with this. As Ted said, while there are those who are talking about repealing it, they've not come up with anything better. They've not come up with anything. And so it's not easy to throw all of this out, but maybe there are some ways that there can be some coming together around something that would see us still in the position of being able to provide comprehensive health care for all Americans, and at the same time it's affordable, and at the same time the premiums don't keep rising so high that we get angry and want to get out of the system. The way that it is organized, and particularly in California, covered California has really the best of all of the states. And they ensure, as they balance what is paid by young people and older people, that they can get younger people into the system as quickly as they possibly can. And they pay maybe a little bit less. And some of you older folks, some of us older folks pay a little bit more. And I think that's fair because, after a certain age, all kinds of things start to happen. Things that nobody warned you about. They didn't tell you it was going to happen. And all of a sudden, you're wondering, why didn't somebody just clue me that after a certain age, these strange things were going to start to happen? So we pay a little bit more. We want more of the young people in, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want you to pay attention to this because you're going to have to make some decisions about what you support. You're going to have to decide what makes good sense for you, your families, and your communities. With that, I'm not going to say much more about affordable care and covered California. I want to end similar to Ted Lieu, to talk about the fact that we do live in the most wonderful country in the world. We live in a democracy. And when you see some of us fighting about being hacked, about elections being interfered with, it is because that's an attack on our democracy. And we don't plan to allow anybody to undo what has been developed in this country for justice and equality for all. We're going to fight for that. And so, having said that, we all have the responsibility to ensure that we're participating in the democracy. It is not that you send someone to Washington and they're going to get it all done. We're nothing without your support. It's not that somebody else is going to do it for you. If you don't belong to something in your community, something's wrong with you. And I want to thank Torrance, because Torrance is well organized. Torrance has more organizations and more ribbon cuttings than any other city. And I love it, because on the business side, if you come into Torrance as a new business, you're going to get welcomed. You're going to, get the ribbon cutting. But if you decide 5 years later that you're going to expand, we're going to come back and we're going to cut another ribbon. And if you decide you're going to open up a second store, we're going to be over there. And if it's a restaurant and you got food to eat, we're going to eat your food. And we're going to have a good time. But the other thing about Torrance is this. The education system and the schools in Torrance are good. And we've got to make sure that we involve ourselves in our schools and in education so that it continue to be one of the best school districts in America. That's extremely important. When Ted talks about cybersecurity, and we talk about STEM, we talk about STEM education, science and engineering, et cetera, our kids got to be educated, or they're not going to be in it. They've got to be educated so that not only can they develop systems and they can create new ways by which we have privacy and we protect ourselves, but they've got to move the world forward. Aren't you proud of SpaceX and Hawthorne? That's in my district. They just had a new launch, and it was successful. And so we should be proud not only of this region, but proud of this country. And we should belong to something, whether it is you're involved in the schools, or whether you're involved in business, or whether you're involved in just going to the city council and making them mad at you because you're accusing them of something they did or did not do. I see that our city council members are here. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you. And so with that, let us not be driven apart because sometimes we disagree. Let us try and understand the other person's point of view, and let's talk to each other. My telephone in my district office is available. It's open all the time, 8 hours a day. Call me. I have a habit of calling people back who call me to curse me out. I call them back. I don't curse them out, but I wish I could. But I thank them for calling me, and then they're so surprised. They said, "Is this really Maxine Waters?" I said, "In person, this is her." And so we talk, and then you'd be surprised how the conversation changes. And it really does. Having said all of that, let me just conclude by saying, if you see me on television saying something you don't like, call me and ask me why I said it or what's driving that, and I'll be happy to talk with you. In the final analysis, I'm not at the inauguration tomorrow. Ted Lieu's not there either. I'm not going to be in this by myself. But I want you to know, for every constituent in my district who asked for tickets, and they had granted us 176 tickets. I covered everybody who wanted to go and who called and asked. We made sure they got their tickets. And for handicapped or older people or what have you, a challenge, they got the few seating ones that we had. And then we got the best standing areas that we could possibly have. Just because there are people who I gave tickets to who don't agree with me would never stop me from sharing with them and allowing them the opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. It's a good place to be sometimes. Thank you.